come on a journey with me as we go through my room and forge for some materials for today's project. We're going to be using some Dollar Tree wax paper, some old journaling cards that I've had for millions of years, some Tim Holtz alcohol ink, and we're going to create something that is both delicate as it is timeless. Today, I'm going to start off by grabbing some of this Dollar Tree wax paper and some old, and I mean old, journaling cards that I've had for so long. I'm going to layer them using some Mod Podge, and what I'm going to be left with is just a beautiful effect. It makes them look vintage and ethereal and lovely, and it's going to transform, in my case, a journaling card that I thought I'd never use because it's not my aesthetic anymore. It's not what my style is anymore, and it allows me to transform it into something that I can use and that I will love. I'm experimenting with different levels of the glue that I'm putting down, in this case Mod Podge, and on this first card that I'm going to do, you're going to see that there's going to be pockets of air because there wasn't enough adhesive to bind the wax paper onto the journaling card, but I'm going to use this to my advantage, and I'm going to cut rips into it to make it look just lovely and vintage and imperfect and perfect. I'm going to be working on these in kind of assembly style, so I'm going to glue them down first, and as they dry, then I'll be able to work on the next one, and then by the time I'm done gluing the last one, then I can start decorating the first one. I'm Ingrid Carlsen, and I am so happy that you're here. Whether you stumbled on this video for the first time or you've been with me for a little while or a long while, I just want to tell you how very much I appreciate you. Yep, you. I appreciate you so very much. And if you're new here and you haven't already subscribed, I would love for you to consider doing that now, as well as hitting the bell so you get notified anytime any of my videos come out, like this one. As the soft layer of the wax paper hits the journal card, it acts almost like a veil, creating a warm and dreamy texture. The wax paper softens the surface and creates a translucent layer, and it allows the colors and textures that are underneath to just whisper through, like distant memories that shimmer softly through the present. It turns a plain card into something that is cherished. It looks like an old love letter that's been kept in a box in the attic for years. As we lay down the wax paper, it feels like we're wrapping the card in a sense of nostalgia, each layer holding its own quiet beauty. And speaking of veils, I thought that this tool would be really beautiful, and so I'm going to show you how to layer it both under the wax paper as well as above the wax paper and see the dreamy effects that it gives. And I'd love to know your opinion if you prefer the one that is under or over the paper. This tool ends up giving this journal card even a more romantic effect, and I end up liking it more than I thought I was going to. Make sure that when you are gluing the tool down that you use your finger to make sure that the glue is making a good bond with the tool since it has so many little holes in it. But wait until you see the finished product. It's going to be so beautiful. I get asked a lot how I print out my printables, and generally when I'm printing out ephemera, I like to print it on 110-pound cardstock, but accidentally I printed this on copy paper, and of course I didn't want to just trash it. I wanted to use it, but I thought this would be a great project to try this on because the wax paper would give it a little extra weight, and When I tell you, I was skeptical at first, and then once it was completely dry, I absolutely love it. I think this is my favorite piece at the end, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. I'm going to rough up these edges, give it a small tear here, a little worn texture here, and it's those imperfections that brings every piece to life. It's like a well-loved page in a forgotten book, and as we work, let's think about the stories that our pieces will tell when they come together. On this piece, instead of cutting the wax paper larger than my journal card, or in this case, my ephemera piece, I'm going to cut it slightly smaller, and I'm also going to distress the edges, which I think in the long run is what makes it so dreamy. Also, since I'm using a wet glue and an inkjet printable, my colors are actually going to begin to run just slightly, because once they get wet, it activates the ink, and I think that attributes to the lovely texture that I get at the end. And that just reminds me that sometimes what we see as obstacles are actually wonderful accidents. And if this wouldn't have happened, it wouldn't have given me the effect that it did at the end that I fell in love with. So today, I just want to encourage you that if you think that you don't have the right materials, or you don't have the right pieces and they're doing something different than what mine do, I want to encourage you to find the beauty in those imperfections and to love what you're creating, because it is a piece of you. It's art that you're creating with your hands, and it is beautiful and lovely, like you. This is where this project starts to get fun, and it takes on so much more personality and almost a life of its own. I think that the hardest part is the beginning part and just gluing down the wax paper, waiting for it to fully dry before getting to this point, but I promise you it is completely worth the wait. Remember how I told you that there were pockets of air in this journal card, and this is where we're going to use it to our advantage. So I'm just going to scrape away at the edges so that it kind of has a peel effect. So it looks like old worn paper. The Tim Holtz Distress Stain does give this a very nice earthy light texture, but I wanted to grunge it up a little more and have it look a little more weathered, like it's been in that attic for centuries just waiting to be uncovered. Using some Tim Holtz alcohol inks, we are going to breathe new life into these pieces, and wait until you see the transformation. It really is spectacular. Whenever I'm working with alcohol inks, I love to have some alcohol nearby in a little bottle. And this allows me to use the alcohol inks so that they are not so strong, and it gives it more of a softer effect. It also acts as an agent to allow the alcohol ink to flow more freely, acting almost like watercolor, where it gets into every single nook and cranny and crevice, kind of like a memory spreading through time. These cards may have been forgotten, but they are yearning for new life to be breathed into them. And as we add the alcohol inks, we're actually taking them back in time, making them feel like they were loved and cherished for years. Each scrape, each tear, and each fold holds a memory that is going to live forever in your journal. Think about the story that you want to tell. Is it a story of love and romance? Or is it sadness? Is it courage and strength? Whatever it is, as you're making these distresses, think about that. Envision what you are trying to say, and then allow that art to tell your story. As you apply the ink, let it move naturally, creating soft layers of color that tell their own quiet stories, and each card becomes a canvas for reflection, a gentle reminder of the beauty found in the simple act of creating. As the ink begins to settle and dry, we can begin to see the story unfolding before our eyes. Each card, each piece of ephemera carries its own little narrative. Whether you use this as a full background page or you cut it into smaller pieces for layering, these soft textured cards invite us to slow down and appreciate the beauty in simplicity. It also reminds us to use those things that are tucked away that we thought we would never be able to use. Look for a new way to breathe life into them and to bring them into your journals to be able to tell your story. These cards that were once forgotten now hold space for our thoughts, for our memories that we wish to preserve, and even the stories that we wish to create. Look at all the dimension and layers that we created on these little unassuming cards that now are tiny pieces of art. But don't worry, we're going to take them up one more level, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to decorate this journal card into a cluster perfect for a tuck spot in your next journal. And as we're looking at these beautiful pieces, it just reminds me that I wanted to tell you today that you are filled with God's peace. You are surrounded in His love, and you are a blessing. Of course, I have to pull out my ephemera book to grab some pieces. I am going to grab just pieces that speak to my heart immediately. I'm not giving it too much thought. Most of the pieces that I have here go with one another. I think I use all of Tim Holtz stuff with the exception of one of my labels, and they just go together so well. So I don't really have to worry about whether they match or not. And I want to encourage you right now that when you are layering clusters, I know sometimes I get questions about how do you do them like this and how do they come easy to you? And I just want to tell you, use what sparks joy in you. Don't worry about what someone else did, including me. Don't worry about what my aesthetic is or what brings me joy. Instead, look at a piece, and if it says to you, hi, and you fall in love with it, use that piece. Don't worry about it. And I promise you that if you do this, if you use this formula, then you're going to love everything that you make. Oh, and if this video has brought you a little inspiration or a little bit of joy to your day, I would love for you to consider giving it a thumbs up. I know it's a small gesture, but it helps this creative community grow, and it lets me know that these quiet moments of crafting are reaching kindred spirits like you. Thank you again for being here and for sharing this journey with me.